While the first film in the Daimajin trilogy was still in production, Studio Dai began production on its sequels, as part of their plan to release all three films within the same year. To accomplish this ambitious endeavor, the films were all assigned different directors while maintaining most of the same crew, including writer Tetsuro Yoshida, who penned screenplays for all three films, establishing and maintaining a consistent formula while also giving each respective director room to express themselves creatively. And so the second film, directed by Kenji Misumi and appropriately titled Return of Daimajin, opened in Japanese theaters just 4 months after the first film, giving audiences more of the same in ways that are both satisfying and highly derivative. In feudal Japan, the Mikoshiba clan, cut off from the riches of resources beyond the surrounding mountains, decides to invade the nearby peaceful kingdoms of Chigusa and Nagoshi. During the ensuing chaos, the lord of Chigusa, Juro, manages to escape, while Mikoshiba marches on to Nagoshi, killing their lord and imprisoning his son Katsushige, threatening to kill him if they do not cooperate and surrender Juro. With seemingly no hope of warding off the invaders, Princess Sayuri Nagoshi prays for their god to help, the statue of which lies in between the two kingdoms, waiting to smite those who have wronged his people. Return of Daimajin works as both a direct sequel to the first film and an original film of its own. With no explicit connections to the previous events, it is free to tell whatever story it wants, which is why it is kind of a shame it decides to instead essentially tell the same tale again. This isn't to say that there are no differences in certain plot elements and characterizations, and there are new ideas and action beats that make it feel different enough that those that simply want more of what the first film offered will be satisfied. But structurally it is the exact same movie as the first film, and adheres to that structure so strictly that as a whole it can't help but feel a tad uninspired. The biggest difference between Return of Daimajin and its predecessor is its complexity. While the first film was simple, dark, and slow-paced, this film is more action-oriented and sees the characters traversing between the two kingdoms in their attempts to defeat the invading Mikoshiba clan. This back and forth between multiple factions makes for a more immediately exciting but slightly more conventional movie, which is not necessarily a bad thing, as it helps separate it from the first film and make it more distinct. However, there is no denying that this conventionality does rob it of its novelty, an effect compounded by its insistence on following the formula of the first film almost beat for beat. Combined with the shorter runtime, the more action-focused narrative also means that characterization is lighter than in the first. All of the same archetypes carry over, and while certainly not bad by any means, like the rest of the film they come across as slightly less effective versions of characters we've already seen. Kojiro Hongo, who you might recognize from a handful of Gamera films, plays the male lead Juro Chigusa, the brave lord of Chigusa who escapes and, with the help of Lord Katsushige Nagoshi, played by Koichi Uenoyama, spends the rest of the film trying to free his kingdom from the brutal and ambitious Lord Danjo Mikoshiba, played by Takashi Kanda. Unlike Samanosuke in the previous film, there's a level of incompetency to him that, while maybe could be argued makes him more nuanced, also makes him a less effective villain. The standout character, though, is Lady Sayuri Nagoshi, played by Shiho Fujimura, a priestess whose desperation, selflessness, and unshakable faith is what awakens the Daimajin from his slumber. But while Return of Daimajin may suffer a bit in originality, that doesn't mean it isn't up to the same standards of the first film in nearly every other way. The production is equally as impressive, transporting you into a fascinating world that blurs the line between history and fantasy. The Daimajin is still the same walking manifestation of vengeance he was in the last film, but the new setting allows for his powers to manifest in new and visually interesting ways, including a breathtaking moment where he parts the waters around him Ten Commandments style. In fact, water is featured heavily throughout, further adding to the biblical feel these films have, while also making the middle chapter of the trilogy feel visually different from its predecessor. Return of Daimajin is a fine sequel in the sense that it gives you more of what the first film offered, just with a different visual palette. If you loved the first film and came out of that wanting more, then chances are you'll enjoy the second film, even though it's obvious it's just telling the same story in a different setting with slightly different circumstances. This is by far the film's biggest weakness. It's hard not to think of what could have been had the film been more ambitious and tried to expand the world and its mythology. Since it repeats the same formula almost beat for beat, its novelty grows thin at a faster rate, so it's difficult not to feel a little underwhelmed in this regard. That being said, if you happen to see this film before the first, chances are you'll come out being more impressed, as everything about it from a production standpoint matches what came before. It's a solid and consistently entertaining movie that offers some new ideas and imagery, but there's simply no denying that it is a significant drop just by virtue of having seen most of what it has to offer in the previous film. For more reviews and opinions on all things kaiju, subscribe and stay tuned to Up From the Depths.